Ideal Protein is a doctor-designed, coach-led ketogenic weight loss protocol that uses food as medicine to empower you to lose weight and live your healthiest life.
And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys out there for joining us today. I am in the booth. We have gotten back or gone to a different format, and I'm not going to talk about it, but this is Around Livingston. It's where we talk about what's going on around Livingston, hence the name. I'm going to let my guest introduce himself. Go ahead, sir.
This is David Gray, news writer with the Livingston Parish News.
And today we have a couple of things to talk about. We're going to start off with the 60-day moratorium is officially over. According to members of the parish council, it did what it was supposed to do. So take it away.
Yeah, that ended very quietly last week in contrast to how, I guess it began loudly. That the moratorium, that was something that people have been citizens have been wanting for some time now, especially this year, 2022, there was 3 big developments in Livingston Parish that have gotten a lot of attention. It was Sweetwater and Deer Run and Denham Springs, both on 4-H Club Road, and then Cavalier just outside French Settlements. Those big subdivisions, the 2 in Denham is about 25-ish hundred lots, and the one in just outside French Settlement, 700 lots. So, a lot of people in those areas that were concerned with what those big developments could do to their areas, and so a lot of them have been pushing for a moratorium for a long time. In May, it was finally approved. One councilman had wanted it for a year to begin with, but they were able to, knowing that President Leighton Ricks would just veto that, they got it down to 60 days, and they could have extended it 30 days, but they wanted to basically give themselves a little bit more time to pass some other ordinances, regulating development, and the council, they did that. I mean, the last 2 months, there's been about a dozen or so ordinances that have been passed that have specifically for development, subdivision density, drainage requirements, detention ponds. I mean, submittals, the studies that have to go with these submittals, the process, like a bunch of stuff that has to deal with development. So they decided that they didn't need the 30 days extra, so they didn't even have to take any action on it since it was technically only 60 days. They needed to take action if they wanted to extend it another 30 days, but they did not want to do that. So there we are. The moratorium ended. It wasn't even first time. The last council meeting on July 28th, that was not only the shortest council meeting I've ever been to. It was about 30 minutes long. It was the first time that the words development, moratorium, subdivision, that none of those words came up. So I'm not saying that the issue has gone away. We got a planning commission meeting later tonight that has Cavalier back on the agenda for the 4th straight month. So it will come back, but for the moment, it at least died down a bit. Like I said, it's not going anywhere. There's still some other things that citizens want to see done, but for the moment, at least it has calmed down a little bit more so than it's been for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 months, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the talks of development and zoning have been,
longer than that.
You can go back into the 50s and 60s and see articles about those things in the paper. It's quite fascinating. So it's fun. For some people, it's not. For some people, it's very personal. A lot of times these developments come near them, but again, interesting to see that, for probably the first time in about 5 or 6 years, this is not. You've had a meeting where there was no controversy.
No, I mean, there was more councilmen than people in the audience at the last meeting.
Wow.
So yeah, and was one absent? Yes, one was absent, and one councilman was absent. So,
there you go.
So yeah, it was just. But like I said, with the planning commission meeting tonight, and depending on that, Cavalier might go back before the council at its next meeting, first meeting in August. I doubt it'll be as calm as the last meeting was, but we'll see.
We shall see. So moving on to a few other things of note. Let's go on to some good news, which is kind of interesting. John and Michelle Cavalier have owned Cavalier House Books right there on the corner of Railroad and Range Avenue for 15 years. 13.
13, yes,
There it
at that
is.
location, yes.
13 years, and they've made a big leap forward
Big leap.
with their business. Well, I'm gonna let you
Yeah,
expose the surprise.
yeah, no, well, they exposed the surprise themselves when they posted it on their Facebook page. But John and Michelle Cavalier, like you said, they've operated out of that bookstore for the last 13 years, and they actually started Cavalier House Books inside their home in 2005. So a little bit before that, they have bought the Crowder Antiques building, which has been, I believe, it's been on sale. I remember seeing that it's been on sale for some time now. I don't know how many months, but several months for sure. And Crowder Antiques building, that was the what used to be the Brown Hotel and Cafe, which is actually on the National Register of Historic Places, one of only a dozen places that Livingston Parish on that list. So they have a place with a lot of history for a bookstore, which seems kind of fitting in a way. At least it did to me. And I know that I spoke with John on the phone the day after, or the day that they made the sale public, and their current space is 1,500 square feet, I believe, and the new space is 2 floors. Even though they only operate on the bottom floor, or that's where they'll have their books and showroom, I guess you could say, on the bottom floor, and that is 3,000 square feet. So they're going to double their size, and then they're also, they're going to have the upstairs. He said they'll probably use that for storage, office area, that sort of thing. But yeah, so I mean, it was just a cool story. And Cavalier House Books, I mean, if you go to any community event in Livingston Parish, they're usually out there selling books, especially at the library. They do a lot of work with the local library system. They're in a bunch of schools as well. They provide the books for a good bit of book fairs in Livingston Parish schools and schools in the Baton Rouge area. So they get out there. So it's cool to see. I can't wait to see what it looks like, because I mean, the thing, John said he wants it to pop whenever you walk in there. So he said there's just going to be books everywhere. So, and I mean, random note, if you're in the mood for a book, I believe they said everything in their store is 25% off right now, because they're trying to get rid of stuff so they don't have to move. So I mean, they'll save money on boxes and moving stuff, and people can get a book at a discounted price. So there you go. There's a little plug for them.
You're welcome, John. So a bit of good news there, because yes, that building has been empty and for sale for quite a while. It formerly Crowder's Antiques, and of course before that it was the Brown Hotel and Cafe. So a lot of historical relevance there. And like you, I mean, that was the first thing I texted him after I said congratulations was, I can't wait to see what y'all do with it.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I know there have been a lot of suggestions, so it's going to be interesting.
I think they had a movie night with their staff and families inside the building the day that they made the sale public. They decided to have a random movie night with everyone. So
yeah,
that was cool to hear about that.
Yeah. They watched A Knight's Tale.
That's right. Yes. I saw Heath Ledger on their picture. I was like, oh, miss him.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's kind of interesting too, because a lot of people, talk about that movie and missing him, but most people are used to Paul Bettany in MCU roles, but that's where I was introduced to him, walking up in the nude, and Mr. William Chaucer himself.
Now he's Vision.
Yes, right. What a 180.
Yeah.
At any rate, moving on with more Livingston Parish news. Unfortunately, the run made by a lady from Walker, who was on So You Think You Can Dance, has come to an end. But I think she learned a lot. She seemed rather positive about it.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, Raylynn Johnson on the July 27th. Yeah, week from last week, well, 1 week ago today. She her run on So You Think You Can Dance ended in the top 6. It was kind of a different format this time. They had 6 dancers left. Each dancer was a part of 2 trio performances, so she danced with 2 others twice, and then they each had a solo performance. Now, during the solo performance, they were randomly paired up, and the audience had to then, after seeing each pair, had to vote between that individual pair. So 3 different votes, essentially, and I guess the audience felt that they prefer the other one. You never know what goes on in those votes because you had just a bunch of people voting. But yeah, like you said, she seemed very positive about her run. She seemed like she learned a lot, and this was a girl who 2 months ago was graduating high school. So I mean, pretty remarkable to be on her graduation stage 2 months ago, and then last week on a national stage on national television. So I'll actually be sitting down with her this weekend. She's teaching some classes at on a moving dance company where she's been a student at since she was a child. She's going to be leading a couple classes, so I'm going to be able to sit down with her and just talk about her, because I've talked to other people. She's the one person I haven't spoken to yet about Raylynn Johnson. I've talked to, half a dozen other people about Raylynn Johnson, but I have not once spoken to Raylynn Johnson except for a few minutes whenever we set up the interview the other day. So that story will be coming out soon. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what it was like for her, being on that stage and some of the moves that she did. Me and my fiance are just like cringing every time because you just never, it's kind of like watching gymnastics where you just feel like they're just going to bust every move because you can't picture yourself doing that. Seeing the stuff she was doing, it just blows your mind. The athleticism and strength it takes to do some of those things. Yeah. People underestimate how much strength and training goes into being a dancer of that caliber. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to her and hearing what she has to say.
Well, and again, you said you'll be doing that this weekend. Coming up towards the end of the show here, do want to plug real quick before we get into the last story. Two things. One, not long after this, you'll be sitting down with Superintendent Joe Murphy to talk about start of school. It should be interesting. You'll be taking my seat as you have been lately.
I won't be on camera.
Yeah, there you go. Big shout out to David for jumping in on these podcasts from the interview standpoint. I am slowly but steadily moving out of the news coverage, so it's a good thing for him to be sitting over here. He knows the questions better than I do. Also, I got to sit down with Jim Chapman and Woody Overton last week, and that print story came out this week as well. We did a podcast interview about a new series they have coming out called Bloody Angola. Very interesting. They're going to be talking about a lot of things you probably have just never heard before, firsthand accounts, interviews with people who have worked there, those sorts of things, pieces of history that may not have made it into your typical high school history book.
I was blown away when they talked about interviewing the physician who tended death row inmates at Angola. That was, and I didn't tease that because he said that on the podcast, right. So that wasn't me, scooping him or anything. So he said that publicly, but that was the one that when that podcast episode comes out, I definitely would want to tune into that one because I just think you would hear some crazy stories.
Yeah, it really sounds like a very interesting series, and they're hoping to do a season 2. They are looking to see how season 1 goes. Of course,
went well so far.
Yeah. First episode drop was number 5.
It reached to number 5. They posted on their page, one spot ahead of a podcast with Katie Couric. So,
yeah, they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think last I saw was number 19 when I checked yesterday. But I mean, still, for a brand new podcast, that's pretty. A brand new podcast.
Probably anything in the top 100 is remarkable.
Yeah.
So congratulations to those two gentlemen. Of course, you can go to our website, www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast, or our YouTube page or our Facebook page to go check that out. And of course, story written by David Gray in this Thursday's paper on the series that is also online. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about the Chamber. I believe that was 2 weeks ago, held a legislative wrap-up event at Holy Ground Coffee in Walker. Not every representative was able to make it, but the slate did include Speaker of the House Clay Schexnayder, Representative Valerie Hodges from the Watson area, Representative Buddy Mincy from the Denham area, and then State Senator Rogers Pope. So give us a brief overview on what those folks had to say.
Yeah, it was just basically just touching on the 2022 legislative session, just some of the wins that they had. Mr. Schexnayder, he kind of stuck with the manufacturing bills and basically business wins. That was kind of his focus. And he talked about one thing that stood out to me was he said that this session invested more money into roads, transportation, drainage, education, than any other one. That was something that stood out. Ms. Hodges, God, getting tongue twisted there. Miss Valerie Hodges, she spoke about redistricting. She was on the committee for that. She kind of explained some of that process, and there was a big fight with that, with some people, with the good bit of people wanting a second minority congressional district in Louisiana, but the Supreme Court voted or ruled that the congressional maps that the session made, that they were able to stay intact for this election. She also talked about something I didn't realize she was on the committee for the Baton Rouge Metro Airport, and so she gave a little plug for that. But Mr. Mincy, he spoke a good bit on local infrastructure. That was kind of his focus in many different areas. Drainage and flooding, he spoke about that. Broadband, he spoke about that, and they actually got a big announcement last week that Livingston Parish will be one of 5 parishes that will have a pilot program for a digital literacy program. They're one of 5 parishes that were selected in the state, and this is just going with the office of, I can't remember, all these different entities have long names, but basically the state is trying to improve broadband access, make it more accessible, affordable, and to improve people's knowledge of how to use that. And the digital literacy component is what this pilot program is going to be focused on. And I've spoke with library officials, because it's going to be through the library system. So whenever that we hear back how that's going to be, how they're going to implement that program, we'll definitely have a story on that. And then they just all took a short Q&A afterwards. But yeah, this is something that they do try to do regularly. The Chamber of Commerce, just to give community members, business leaders an update on just what happened in the previous session. And next week we'll have a week from today, when Parish President Leighton Ricks will make his annual State of the Parish address. So we'll have that story too next week.
Yeah, that'll be on Wednesday also, hosted by the Chamber. Alrighty, sir. Well, if you will take a minute to introduce yourself, we'll wrap it up here.
This is David Gray, news writer with the Livingston Parish News.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys out there for joining us for the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show. This is Around Livingston, where I sit down with Mr. Gray, and we talk about news, politics, and some of the lifestyle things going on in the parish. Mr. Rob DeArmond, we will not be having a podcast with him this week that's titled From the Cheap Seats, which is what sports journalists call their job, because they get to go to every game, right? They don't have to pay the way like the rest of us do. But anyway, Mr. Rob is out on leave at the moment, but we will be kicking back off with him, and literally kicking off, because next week school starts and football starts and all sorts of fun things.
He'll get plenty of talking soon.
Yes, so we will see him next week. We appreciate you guys out there for joining us. Please remember the news is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. We appreciate you joining us for the show, and we'll see you next time.